I keep seeing the same thing in people's energy this weekend. Like, there's this pattern showing up everywhere, this strange combination of clarity and overwhelm at the same time, people feeling kind of cracked open but in a way they can't fully explain. And it finally makes sense when you look at what happened in the sky yesterday. February 20th, Saturn and Neptune made an exact conjunction at 0 degrees Aries. And if you're thinking, okay, cool, planets line up all the time, that's fair, but this one is genuinely different. I want to explain why. Because understanding this changes how you interpret everything you've been feeling in the last few days, and honestly, the last few months. So today, February 21st, we're the morning after that conjunction. We're living inside this energy. It's not approaching anymore. It landed. And if you've been feeling something shift recently, something hard to name, but impossible to ignore, this is almost certainly why. What I'm going to do in this video is walk you through everything happening right now in the sky, because it's not just one thing. It's a whole cluster of energies arriving at the same time, and they're all connected. I'm going to explain what the Saturn-Neptune conjunction actually means for your daily life. Then I'll go through all 12 signs and tell you specifically what this is activating for you and what that means in real terms. And I'll talk about the bigger picture of what's shifting collectively. This is a longer one, but I think it's worth staying with because what happened yesterday is the kind of thing astrologers have been tracking for years. This is not a weekly transit that moves through and disappears in a few days. This is a generational marker, and you're in it right now. Before we get into it, if you find this kind of content useful, leave a like and subscribe. I do these regularly. And drop "I feel it" in the comments so I can see who's tuned into this energy with me. Okay, let's get into this properly. Saturn and Neptune don't come together often. The last time was 1989. Before that, 1952. Before that, 1917. Each of those years marked a fundamental shift in how reality was organized, how people understood the relationship between what's real and what they believed could be real. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell within days of the conjunction. A structure built entirely on ideology and enforced by very real consequences collapsed almost overnight. That's the kind of energy this carries. What makes this 2026 conjunction different from all of those is where it's happening. At 0 degrees Aries, the very first degree of the first sign of the zodiac. Traditional astrologers call 0 degrees of the cardinal signs Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, world points. These are the degrees that correlate with things that affect everyone collectively, not just certain charts. When something happens at a world point, it has broad resonance. On a personal level, Saturn is the part of you that wants evidence, proof, a plan. It's your capacity for discipline, responsibility, and long-term thinking. Neptune is almost the opposite. It's the part of you that believes, that feels, that senses things beyond what logic can confirm. It dissolves boundaries. It dreams beyond what's practical. When they come together at the very start of the zodiac cycle, they create a moment of reset. The question becomes, what are you actually building? And is it built on something real, or something you hoped would be real? Because Saturn-Neptune conjunctions dissolve illusions that were structural. Not passing fantasies, but things you'd actually organized your life around that weren't as solid as you thought. That can feel like loss. But more often, when you're on the other side of it, you realize what fell apart wasn't the thing itself. It was the version of the thing that wasn't quite true, the version you were telling yourself. What's underneath the real version often turns out to be worth building on, and the flip side is equally true. For some people, this isn't about disillusionment at all. It's about a vision that seemed too big or too impractical, suddenly finding its foundation. A creative or spiritual path that felt intangible starting to take concrete shape. Both of these things are happening for different people right now, and the key is being honest enough with yourself to know which one is operating in your life. Today, February 21st, is the morning after the exact conjunction. Saturn and Neptune are still sitting right on top of each other. They'll stay in very close range for weeks. But yesterday was the peak, and what tends to happen the day after a major transit is that the processing begins. Things that were building slowly start to clarify. The emotional charge starts to settle into understanding. If you woke up feeling different in a way you can't explain, or suddenly clear about something that's been confusing for months, or you feel this strange mixture of sadness and relief, you're not making that up. That's exactly what this transit feels like the morning after. On top of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, we have 3 planets clustered in Pisces right now. The Sun, which moved into Pisces on February 18th, just after the solar eclipse in Aquarius. Venus, sitting at about 10 degrees Pisces in her exaltation. And Mercury at around 18 degrees Pisces, sitting right next to the North Node at about 9 degrees. That's significant. Venus in Pisces is one of the most beautiful placements in the zodiac. Love in Pisces is unconditional in the truest sense. It's not transactional or ego-based. It's the ability to see the genuine depth in another person, to hold space for their full complexity without needing them to be something other than what they are. In practical terms, Venus here makes it easier to forgive, to extend grace, to drop your defenses just enough to let something real come in. Combined with the Saturn-Neptune energy of reality checking our emotional foundations, this creates an interesting dynamic. You can see a relationship very clearly, sometimes uncomfortably clearly, and still choose to love it fully. Clarity and love at the same time. That combination is rare and worth paying attention to. If a relationship has been sustained by something hazy, an illusion, a hope, a projection, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction has a way of bringing that into the light. Not cruelly, but because both planets together don't allow for sustained self-deception. The fog lifts and you see what's underneath. For some people that's a relief because what's underneath is solid. For others the fog lifts and there's just more fog. Either way, Venus in Pisces gives you the emotional capacity to handle whatever you find with grace. Mercury on the North Node is the other piece. The conversations happening in your life right now carry more weight than usual. Mercury in Pisces operates intuitively, not in straight logical lines. You pick up on things before they're spoken. You read between the lines. And with the North Node there, the information coming in, the ideas surfacing, the conversations that feel significant, they're pointing in a direction that matters. Pay attention to the ones that land with a sense of recognition. One more layer to today specifically. The moon has been in Aries since last night and enters Taurus at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. But between 6:11 a.m. and 6:30 p.m., the moon is void, of course. That's over 12 hours of void, and it's relevant to how you approach your Saturday. A void, of course. Moon is what happens when the moon has made its last major aspect in its current sign and is coasting toward the sign change. Things started during a void tend not to develop the way you intend. Decisions made during a long void often fizzle or go sideways. It's not a great time for launching something new or making a major commitment. But here's the gift of it. A long void during a day when you're processing a major conjunction is actually perfect. Today is not meant for action. It's meant for integration. After what happened yesterday, your inner world is doing a lot of processing, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. This void moon is permission, really instruction to slow down and let that happen. When the moon enters Taurus this evening, the energy shifts. Taurus is grounded, sensory, patient, steady. After the intensity of Aries and the blurriness of the long void, the Taurus moon tonight brings a settling quality. Coming back into your body, feeling your feet on the ground, eating something nourishing, resting, being physical in a gentle way. The prescription for today is simple. Don't start anything new or make big moves before 6:30 p.m. Use the daylight hours for reflection, journaling, gentle movement, being in nature if you can. Have the conversations that need to be had. Let yourself feel what's already in motion. And then this evening, when the moon moves into Taurus, let yourself actually rest. Aries, this conjunction is happening in your first house, and I want you to understand what that means because it's one of the most profound placements for this transit. The first house isn't about your relationships or career or finances. It's about you, your sense of self, your presence in the world, the answer you give when someone asks who you are. Saturn in your first house has been asking you to grow up in a very specific way, to take responsibility for who you are, to stop deferring your identity to circumstances, to other people's expectations, to who you used to be. Saturn in the first doesn't let you stay on the surface of yourself. It requires depth, and that pressure has probably felt heavy at times. Neptune in your first house has been doing something different. It blurs. It makes you feel uncertain about who you are. There are days it probably felt like you were becoming something new but didn't know what. Like the old version of you was dissolving and the replacement hadn't shown up yet. That identity uncertainty, as uncomfortable as it is actually a creative process. You can't build the next version of yourself while still tightly holding on to the last one. The conjunction yesterday was the peak of that process. And today, the morning after, many Aries are going to feel something settle into clarity. Not necessarily a massive revelation, but a quiet, solid knowing about who you're actually becoming. Chiron is also in your sign at 23 degrees, which means you've got Saturn, Neptune, and Chiron all in your first house simultaneously. There's a healing happening around your core wounds connected to identity and your right to take up space. Let that healing do its work. What to do with all of this? Stop asking yourself who you used to be and start asking what you're actually becoming. The pressure you've been under is not punishment, it's sculpting. And the version of you that's emerging from this is more genuinely yours than what came before. Taurus, this conjunction is landing in your 12th house. The 12th house is the most private sector of the chart. It rules the unconscious, hidden things, what we keep from ourselves as much as from others. It also rules solitude, spiritual practice, and the wisdom that only comes from being alone with yourself long enough to hear what's actually there. Saturn in your 12th has been asking you to confront something you've been avoiding. Not someone else's stuff, yours. Some pattern, some fear, some old wound operating beneath the surface. The discomfort of this placement is that 12th house work is invisible. Nobody sees you doing it. It happens in private, in dreams, in quiet moments, but it's real and it matters enormously. Neptune in your 12th is somewhat natural for Neptune, since the 12th is Neptune's own domain. So for you, this conjunction has a different quality. Less about sudden disruption and more about a deep inner knowing that something operating in your unconscious is finally ready to come into the light. Today, let it. Gemini, this conjunction is in your 11th house. Community, social circles, long-term visions, the groups you align yourself with. Saturn here has been asking, are the people around you actually aligned with who you're becoming? Are your long-term dreams built on something real? Or are you still chasing something that doesn't fit anymore? Neptune in the 11th created some confusion around this, making it hard to see your friendships and collective goals clearly. The conjunction yesterday was a moment of truth about all of that. Pay attention to what feels different about a friendship or a vision for your future over the next few days. Clarity is arriving. Cancer, you're feeling this in your 10th house, career, public reputation, and broader life direction. And you have the added layer of Jupiter retrograde in your own sign doing an internal review of your emotional foundations. So there's this tension between the outer world you're building and the inner world you're living in. What Saturn and Neptune have been doing in your 10th is asking whether your professional life is actually aligned with who you are. Not what seems practical or what others recognize, but who you genuinely are. Neptune dissolves any professional mask you've been wearing, and Saturn asks what remains once the mask comes off. What remains is worth building on. The moon squaring Jupiter today can make you feel scattered or emotionally restless. Don't use that as a reason to avoid what's surfacing. The restlessness is the thing trying to get your attention. Leo, this conjunction is in your 9th house. Philosophy, higher education, belief systems, publishing, and the search for meaning. Leo, at its core, wants to live a life that means something, and Saturn and Neptune in your ninth have been doing a reckoning with your beliefs. What do you actually believe? Not what you say you believe, not what you were raised to believe, but what do you genuinely hold as true in your lived experience? Saturn has been asking for evidence, for your beliefs to be grounded in something you can actually stand on. Neptune has been dissolving the inherited beliefs that have been running on autopilot. The conjunction yesterday may have felt like a spiritual recalibration, a sense that some framework you've been using to make sense of your life is shifting. That's not a crisis, that's maturation. Virgo, Saturn and Neptune are in your 8th house. The 8th is one of the most misunderstood places in the chart. It rules transformation, shared resources, joint finances, intimacy, and the parts of life that require you to surrender control because someone else is involved. It's the house that asks whether you're willing to go beneath the surface of things. Saturn in your 8th has been demanding accountability around shared financial situations, power dynamics in close relationships, and the places where you've been avoiding real depth. Neptune here has either created confusion around these things, or it's brought a spiritual quality to your experience of transformation. The conjunction yesterday was a peak moment in this process. For Virgo, this likely means something became very clear about a financial arrangement, an intimate relationship, or a power dynamic. Trust that clarity. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's useful. Libra, this is your 7th house, which is partnerships in every sense. Romantic partners, business partners, close collaborators. The 7th is where we meet the other, where we see ourselves through someone else's eyes. Saturn here has been asking, is this relationship solid? Can it hold weight? Is the foundation here something that will last? Neptune has been blurring the lines, sometimes making you see what you want to see, or in some cases bringing a genuine spiritual depth to a significant relationship. The conjunction yesterday was a moment of relational truth for Libra. Something about a significant partnership became clearer, more real. For some Libras, this is confirmation that something is solid and worth investing in. For others, it's the moment of stopping the pretense that a situation is something it isn't. Both of those are acts of care for yourself, and both are worth honoring. Scorpio, Saturn and Neptune are in your 6th house. Daily work, routines, health, and the practical structures of everyday life. Scorpio's tendency is to go deep on the big meaningful things while sometimes neglecting the daily foundation that holds everything else up. Saturn in your 6th has been demanding that you take your health and daily routine seriously, that you address what you've been postponing in your physical body, your work habits, your systems. Neptune here has either made those areas murky and hard to pin down, or it's brought a spiritual dimension to your daily work, a sense that what you do with your ordinary days matters more than you realized. The conjunction yesterday may have brought clarity about your health or work situation. Something that's been vague is becoming more defined. Pay attention to what that clarity is saying about what needs to change in your practical existence. Scorpio tends to focus on depth and meaning, and this transit is asking you to apply that same depth to the basics. Sagittarius, this conjunction is in your 5th house. Creativity, self-expression, romance, play, and the things you create purely because they light you up. Saturn in your 5th has been uncomfortable for Sagittarius in a particular way, because Sagittarius values freedom and joy above almost everything, and Saturn here puts restrictions on exactly that. It asks you to take your creative life seriously. It can make love feel less effortless and more complicated. It can make you feel like you've lost your spark. Neptune in the 5th can bring a highly idealized romance or creative vision, something that feels almost too beautiful to be real. And it might have been exactly that. The conjunction yesterday was a moment of reckoning with that. Either the ideal had enough reality in it to be worth building on, or it didn't. Sagittarius, your task now is finding the version of your creative life and joy that has both inspiration and enough structure to sustain itself. Not every desire needs a 5-year plan, but the ones that matter do. Capricorn, Saturn and Neptune are in your fourth house. This is a deeply personal placement. The fourth house is home, family, your roots, your earliest foundations and your inner world, the part of life that nobody else really sees. It's the most private sector of the chart. Saturn in your fourth has been asking you to deal with your foundations in a real way. That can mean literal home situations requiring responsible decisions. It can mean family dynamics that require you to step up rather than avoid. It can mean going back to your roots and examining which parts of your upbringing are serving you and which are patterns you've been carrying unconsciously. Neptune here has dissolved the certainty about home and belonging. Sometimes that looks like a living situation that felt secure becoming uncertain. More often it looks like a shift in your internal sense of home, your understanding of where you come from and what that actually means for you now. The conjunction yesterday was a moment of settlement around these themes. Something about your home, your family, or your private foundations either became more real or was honestly assessed for the first time. There may be grief in this for some Capricorns, a sadness about the gap between what home felt like as an idea and what it's actually been. Let yourself feel that, and then let Saturn help you build something more genuine. Aquarius, this conjunction is in your third house. Communication, how you think, your immediate environment, your neighborhood and local community, siblings, and your daily mental activity. Saturn here has been asking you to take your thinking and communicating more seriously, to communicate with more precision and integrity, to deal honestly with your immediate world and the people in it. Neptune in the third has either blurred communication and made things feel misunderstood, or it's brought a more intuitive quality to how you think and express yourself. Something important, you're still in the post-eclipse window from the solar eclipse on February 17th in Aquarius. That eclipse was in your first house. Combined with Saturn-Neptune in your third, you're in a period of rebuilding how you present yourself to the world and what you actually say when you do. The conjunction yesterday was a clarifying moment about your voice and your ideas. Trust that. Pisces, you have the most going on in the sky right now, and I want to give you the full picture. The Sun, Venus, and Mercury are all in your sign. That's a stellium in your first house, your identity and presence in the world. Everything we talked about earlier with the Pisces stellium is landing directly on your sense of self. You are in a period of genuine self-renewal. The Sun in your first house means it's your season. Your energy is more visible than usual. People notice you. There's a quality of being seen that comes with the Sun in your first house that can feel both affirming and slightly uncomfortable for Pisces, who often prefers to operate at a slight angle from full visibility. But lean into it. This is a time to let yourself be known. Venus in your first house in exaltation is putting your capacity for love and compassion right at the forefront of who you are right now. You are probably more magnetic than usual, more able to draw in people who resonate with your authentic self. This is a beautiful time for relationships and creative projects that come from an honest place in you. Mercury on the North Node in your first house means that what you think and say and share right now is in alignment with where things are meant to go. If you've been sitting on something, a creative project, a conversation you need to have, a truth you've been hesitant to express, this is the time to let it out. Saturn and Neptune in Aries are in your second house. Values, resources, your relationship to what you own and earn. Saturn has been asking you to build a more honest relationship with money and what you genuinely value. Neptune has made that sometimes murky. The conjunction yesterday was a moment of financial or values clarity. Be honest about where your resources are going and whether that reflects what you actually care about. The answer might surprise you. It's worth looking at the full sequence of recent events because nothing happening right now is isolated. It's all part of a larger unfolding. On February 1st, a full moon in Leo brought certain things in your life to a culmination. Then on February 9th, the last quarter moon asked what needed to be released. What were you holding on to that was preventing the next chapter from arriving? Then on February 17th, the solar eclipse in Aquarius at 28 degrees. Solar eclipses open new chapters, sometimes forcefully. The degree, 28, Aquarius, right on the edge of the sign, added a quality of completion and beginning at the same time. And then 3 days after the eclipse, February 20th, Saturn and Neptune met at 0 Aries. If the eclipse set a new trajectory, the conjunction provided the framework for it. What are we actually building? What is real? What do we believe is possible? These are the questions the conjunction asks in the days following an eclipse that already disrupted the status quo. We're now in the waxing crescent phase, about 4 days past the eclipse. Waxing crescent is the phase of intention and early movement, the phase where you take the first real steps in the direction the new cycle is pointing. The energy isn't yet strong enough for full action, but it's strong enough for direction setting, for making small moves that signal where you want to go. This is why today, even with its long void moon, is meaningful. The integration you're doing right now is not passive. It's active processing. You're sorting through what the eclipse disrupted and what the conjunction clarified, and you're beginning to understand what you're actually being pointed toward. That understanding, even when it arrives quietly and half-formed, is the seed of the next cycle. If you want to work with this energy intentionally, write something down today, not a formal plan. Just a few sentences about what is becoming clearer, what you're releasing, what you're building toward. Put it somewhere you'll find it later. Because this moment, February 21st, the morning after a 36-year conjunction, in the post-eclipse crescent phase, is a marker. It's the kind of day that, looking back, you'll recognize as the beginning of something. Let me give you some practical guidance, because astrology is only useful if it helps you actually live your life better. For the next week, while the Saturn-Neptune energy is still very active and the Pisces stellium is in full force, a few things are worth keeping in mind regardless of your sign. First, truth-telling. Saturn-Neptune at 0 Aries does not tolerate willful self-deception. Not the dramatic kind necessarily, but the quiet, everyday kind. The story you tell yourself about why you haven't changed that thing. The narrative you've constructed about a relationship that protects you from looking at it honestly. The professional situation you've been describing as fine when it hasn't been. This transit makes those small sustained deceptions uncomfortable. Not because something external exposes them, but because internally you just can't maintain the gap between what you're telling yourself and what's actually true anymore. The invitation is to narrow that gap proactively, to start saying what you actually think, to yourself at minimum. Second, patience with process. Neptune is slow, it doesn't deliver conclusions, it delivers evolving clarity. If you came into this week hoping for a clear, definitive answer about something you've been confused about, you might be partly satisfied. The fog lifts somewhat, but the full picture might take a few more weeks. Don't force a conclusion just because you're tired of uncertainty. Third, communication. With Mercury on the North Node in Pisces, the conversations happening in your life right now carry unusual weight. Not every conversation, but the ones that feel significant, the ones where something gets resolved or revealed. Those are load-bearing moments. Show up for them. Say the real thing. Fourth, rest. This is a lot of energy moving through a dense configuration, and your nervous system is processing more than usual whether you notice it or not. Sleep is not wasted time this week. Dreams are meaningful. Slowness is productive. For cardinal signs Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, you're taking this conjunction most directly. The friction you're feeling is productive. It's pushing something important forward. Be patient with it. For fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, you're experiencing an awkward adjustment energy. Something doesn't quite fit anymore, and you're becoming aware of it even without a clear directive about what to change. Sit with that awareness. The adjustment will clarify. For mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, your natural flexibility is an asset here. You're probably adapting more easily than most. But watch the mutable shadow, which is dispersing the energy rather than focusing it. This moment asks for some direction and commitment. Don't let adaptability become avoidance. So that's where we are on February 21st, 2026. Saturn and Neptune just met at the first degree of the zodiac for the first time since 1989. The Sun, Venus, and Mercury are all in Pisces. The Moon is in a long void and moves into Taurus this evening. We are 4 days past a solar eclipse in Aquarius. And depending on your sign, this is hitting a specific part of your life in a very specific way. If you're feeling emotionally tender, that makes complete sense. If you have unexpected clarity about something you've been confused about for months, that makes sense too. If you feel like some version of you is in the process of ending without knowing yet what comes next, that is exactly what this transit does. It dissolves before it builds. You're in the dissolving right now. The building comes later, and it does come. Don't rush through today. The void moon is practically a directive to slow down. Let this weekend be softer. Give yourself the grace of not having to figure everything out or perform or produce right now. The conjunction already did the heavy lifting. Your job now is to absorb it and trust that what's surfacing is showing you something real and useful, even when it's uncomfortable. And honestly, I think you're more ready for this than you realize. The fact that you're paying attention, that you're trying to understand what's happening and work with it rather than against it, that's already most of what this transit asks. Awareness is action in the Neptune sense of the word. Trust yourself through what's coming up. Trust the clarity that's arriving. Trust the things that feel like they're ending. And trust that whatever is forming on the other side of this, even if it's not fully visible yet, is built on something more honest than what it's replacing. If this resonated with you, leave a like and subscribe, and drop "I feel it" in the comments. I want to see who's in this with me. Take good care of yourself this weekend. It's a significant one. I'll catch you in the next one.